Without further ado, let me introduce you to the speaker of today. We have with us Madam Geetha Gopi N. She is the director at the Sashakti Trust with over 30 years of experience in helping children with special needs. Ma'am has worked in international schools following an American curriculum for inclusive settings for more than 15 years. Ma'am has done intensive work in curriculum development and adaptations and behavioral management. She helps promote the best educational practices using UDL principles among staff and parents. She's also launched the Early Academic Series, which is a teacher's kit for teaching English language skills and basic math based on universal design of learning. It's a pleasure to have you with us, ma'am. I would like to inform you all that the session is for 2 hours, 1 hour of knowledge sharing by the speaker and the other hour where your questions would be answered. And after 10 minutes, the chat settings would be switched to hosts and panelists. Wishing you all a happy learning. Over to you, Geetha ma'am.
Good evening to all the participants who are participating in this workshop. So welcome to yet another workshop of, through the Ability platform that I'll be presenting. And without much ado, I'll just go into today's program. Today's workshop is on expressive writing skills. And let me just share the screen. Yes, so today's workshop is on building expressive writing skills in children with special needs or with other academic challenges. And this is the first part, the basic level of writing is that what we are focusing on today. So I'm sure you had an earlier workshop on writing. In your earlier workshop, you must have gone through the different components that contribute to developing the process, the penmanship or the handwriting skills. What are some of the handwriting challenges that we see in children with academic or difficulties or other special needs conditions? And then, strategies and techniques, how you could improve the various aspects of handwriting, that is the physical process of writing. Today, we are going to delve into, what exactly are expressive writing skills and what is the importance of these skills in your schooling years. What are the different kinds of skills that are involved in, writing, expressive writing, particularly when we move on from letters and words into sentence writing. And then challenges that, often continue to haunt children who have special needs, especially in the area of expressive writing, emergent expressive writing. And then last but not the least, we look at strategies, techniques, and different kinds of learning activities that help them to get kick-started into the process of expressive writing. So just to give you an idea about, what is writing? What do we mean when we say writing? It is a process by which we use symbols such as the letters of the alphabet, the punctuation, the spaces between the words, etc., to communicate thoughts, ideas to other people so that they are able to read and understand what our thoughts and ideas are. So basically putting in print our thoughts, ideas, and imaginations for the sake of others so that they can read and understand our point of view. Generally, when we say write, we use a writing tool such as a pen or a pencil on a surface such as paper or a whiteboard or chalkboard or whatever it is that you use. But alternatively, nowadays with the advent of technology, we don't just, if we have to express thoughts through print, we can also use a keyboard that is for typing, which is normally attached to a mobile device or a computer, etc. And nowadays, to convey your thoughts and ideas, instead of even having not to rely on just the process of writing, you can even have speech to text software programs where you can speak into the, using the software and your speech will be transcribed into print. So a lot of people can actually use it without having to go through the physical process of writing. So these are alternative methods to what we normally perceive as writing. Interdependence between writing and reading. It goes without saying that when we talk about the schooling years and the early academic years in particular, the whole literacy part of it includes the listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So it's the LSRW skills. And there's a high correlation and interdependence between the skills of reading, comprehension, as well as writing. And they both feed into each other. It is generally seen that reading and writing are very interdependent, and usually you find good writers are good readers as well. And it has been said that the best way to improve somebody's reading ability is through writing, and vice versa. Writing makes reading more fluent, more improves a person's comprehension level, and it triggers and enhances one's critical thinking, logical thought, reasoning, etc. And in literacy, as I said earlier, the LSRW skills, out of the LSRW, the writing part of it, the W part of it is almost the final and a cumulative skill that develops as a result of the earlier LSR, that is listening, speaking, and reading. So they're all not only interdependent, but they also lead from one to the other. And generally, it starts off with the listening and speaking, and then reading and comprehension, and then finally culminates in the skill of writing. When we talk about writing, there are two main components. One is the handwriting, that is the physical process of writing, and then there's a creative or expressive writing, which is commonly called written expression. In handwriting, it is purely the mechanical process of using tools such as the pencil or the pen to print the words or to write the words on paper, on board, etc. It involves a lot of skills which are more physical in nature, which is like visual motor coordination, fine motor skills to be able to manipulate the writing tool, that is the pencil or the pen or the marker, etc. The right posture to be, to assume while you're writing so that you can write with, ease, with fluency and with accuracy, and without exhaustion and fatigue. So that is one part. And I'm sure the earlier workshop has touched on the different aspects of these skills and, how to remediate or ameliorate them if children with challenges have difficulties in this area. Today, we are going to deal more into the creative or expressive part of writing, where it is the process of writing sentences, paragraphs, etc., and to put forth your thoughts and ideas. And when it comes to written expression, it involves a lot of creativity, originality of ideas, your own life experiences about the whatever you're writing about, the vocabulary, or the word knowledge that you have, the kind of the body of words that you have in your pockets, grammar, that is how sentences are structured, how the words have to be put in order to convey the thought correctly. Spellings, that is when you write the words down, you have to have the letters in its right place so as to be able to spell the word correctly. And last but not the least, punctuation. That is it, which adds on to the quality of your writing, like where the sentence ends, where it begins, where you have to pause. The tonality of your sentences also is effectively communicated through punctuation. So all this comes under the purview of expressive or creative writing. So what is the importance of writing? Why do writing skills have to be taught to children? Writing is a very, very key skill which helps communicate one's thoughts and ideas and perspective to others. And in the schooling years, writing is a very, very important skill because a lot of what you have learned and your demonstration of what you've learned to the teacher or to others, or as part of the assessment grading process, is through the process of writing your assignments, writing your tests and exams, etc. So writing is a very, very important skill to acquire and maintain, particularly during your schooling years. As a form of communication, if you look at written skills, anything that is written can transcend time. It lasts over several years, perhaps even centuries, and you can pass on stories, information, articles, etc., from one generation to another. In most of the countries where you have ancient literature, etc., all many of them have been passed on through the process of writing. So it is a very, very powerful communication tool, which lasts for a long time. What you say, lasts for some time, and then it is erased unless it's recorded and reproduced. So similarly, but written documents can be preserved and passed on and maintained for a long period of time. Thereby, you building up a certain knowledge base regarding whatever topic that you're talking about. And then writing, brings about a balance in the literacy skills. Along with reading and comprehension, a balanced literacy skill formation is supported with the development of good written expression skills. So many of the skills required writers, and developing a very optimal amount of literacy skills helps in children becoming very effective communicators. And that's therein lies the importance of learning how to write effectively and with ease. Research findings also have corroborated with this viewpoint. It has shown that writing improves the creativity of people. It kind of triggers a sort of thinking process, brings out original ideas in children. When one writes, certain areas of the brain, which is usually called the frontal cortex, which is the seat of creativity, have been known to be stimulated. Writing skills are goes without saying, lays the foundation for good academic success as well. To as I said earlier, to earn a good degree, to go through the process of presenting your projects, your assignments, your exams, tests, etc. A good amount of writing skills need to be developed in children. So writing skills, thus, a form. Uh, these are very essential skills for any child to develop, for any individual to develop, and are helpful in not just academic area, or if you want to become an academician, but in any area or in any field, these skills are important and it has its repercussions. So when we talk about good writing skills, what are some of the requisites, areas that need to be in place for children to become good writers? Uh, as we said earlier, one is reading fluency and good vocabulary. So, we did say that reading has a direct influence uh, on writing skills. So, if the child is able to read fluently and take in the vocabulary, take in ideas, understand what they're reading, and they read, with ease and accuracy, and develop good word knowledge, that is good vocabulary, that promotes good writing skills. Therefore, it tends to reflect in their writing skills as well. So reading fluency and development of good vocabulary skills in children is very important if we have to aim at them developing good written skills. The second thing is, background knowledge of what is going to be written about. If you're asking a child to write about something, they need to have some clue or some idea about what they're going to write about. Suppose you're going to give them a topic and say, can you write about what you did in the weekend? So then it should be something that they have experienced, that they have done something in the weekend, so that they can write about it. So having some kind of a knowledge about the topic or about the sentence that is going to be written, or having an experience of that, actually triggers better written skills. And it depends on, writing skills do depend on how much of the prior knowledge they have about the topic or that they're going to write about. Processing the information while writing. So writing involves a mechanical process, which is, taking a pen or pencil and penning down your thoughts on paper. But while doing that mechanical process, or while doing the writing by hand, children have to process information simultaneously. They have to be attentive to what they're writing, to the topic at hand. They have to have some working memory of what they have written or what they're going to write next, and so on. So, having a working memory of what is happening in that moment. And then, of course, reasoning. That is, deciding what to write, what not to write, how to put in certain information, and etc. So, all these different cognitive processes that happen, that contribute to writing, should occur in synchronization with the mechanical process of writing with a pen or a pencil. So they need to go hand in hand. And then, of course, last but not the least, one of the most important parts of being, writing written expression is being able to construct sentences, sentence construction and cohesion. Sentence construction means being able to build sentences, typical to whatever language they are building the sentence in, with the correct grammar, with the correct punctuation, spellings, and so on. And then sentence cohesion. Sentence cohesion means how the sentence comes together. If how the words are arranged in a certain order, or if you're writing more than one sentence on a particular topic, how one sentence connects with the other. How there is a flow in what you're writing. So all these points are very, very important and are absolutely required for the children to develop good writing skills. So then when we talk about what do we teach when we are talking about teaching expressive writing skills, what is the sequential order that we have to, cater to when we are teaching writing skills? It goes without saying that when children are starting to write, it initially starts off with, scribbling, and then it goes on to tracing and copying and so on. And slowly they start writing by themselves. We generally start with letters of the alphabet of whatever language we are training the child in. And then we put letters together to form words. And then once children know how to write words, then you string together words and get them to form sentences. And sentences need form sentences to convey a complete thought or an idea. And then we go on to the next thing. Once they can form basic or very simple sentences, then they go on to sentences with more details in it. That is expanded sentences, adding more details and making your sentences lengthier and adding more information and details into your sentences to convey your thoughts even more effectively. And then we come to, after sentences with details, we come on to paragraphs, where you have to string together certain number of sentences, 3 to 5 or even more sentences, and write about in length about a certain topic or an idea. So paragraphs, basically, you have 2 or 3 different types. Some can be informative paragraphs, usually a fiction, non-fiction things. Suppose you're writing about an animal, or you're writing about a place, or the tourist places that you visited. Those are informative paragraphs. You're actually writing about real facts that are about that topic. So it can be, paragraphs can be informative, where you put in real facts. It's more like, non-fiction writing. Then there can be descriptive paragraphs, where you have a particular idea and you're kind of, giving more and more descriptions and, about that particular topic or idea. For example, it can be a character in a story. Once you've read a story, you take probably the main character in the story, and then ask the children to write a descriptive paragraph about the character in the story. So, you add on all the things, that pertains to that character. And then you can also have explanatory paragraphs. Explanatory is when just think you have done something, the child has done an activity, probably, and then explaining how they went about doing that activity. say they have done an art project, and then writing a paragraph about how they did that art project. So, or even like say writing a recipe for a dish that they've made or cooked is an explanatory paragraph. So, there are different kinds of paragraphs can be taught. And then you can have expressive writing, which requires certain formats, which are formatted, which means like, writing an informal letter or formal letter, an invitation, a formal invitation note, like an invitation to a party, a thank you note or a get well card, writing a book review or a book report, etc. Or, even writing a story, a summary of a story using a story map and so on. So a formatted writing is where, there is a rigid format that is given, that is the date has to be on one particular side. Then there is a salutation. For example, if you're writing a letter, you have to start, you have to have the date, you have to have the salutation where you're greeting the person you're writing the letter to, and then you have the body of the letter, and then you have a conclusion where you end the letter with certain salutary, like yours sincerely or whatever, and then you put your name down. So these are all the formatted kind of writing where, a certain rigid format is there which the children have to learn, and they have to learn how to write, um, specifically in the format that is required of. And then, of course, you have the far more bigger, bigger portions of writing pieces, such as writing a story, writing an essay, writing a composition, which involves, several paragraphs. So if it is, when it comes to writing a story or an essay, it is many paragraphs woven together. And one leading to the other. So basically, it starts off with sentences and paragraphs, and then it's an expansion of paragraphs into, more number of paragraphs devoted to a particular topic, and to give us a string of events that happen, so that it forms a story or it forms an essay and so on. So these are basically the different skills that you have to teach, the different things that you have to teach when it comes to written expression, and follows in that order. So when we talk about the challenges faced by children with special needs in expressive writing, what do you think are the different kinds of challenges? I would like the participants to come forth and, probably add on. What do you think are the challenges faced by children when it comes to expressive writing?
They say organization of thought, problem in expression, poor spellings, lack of ideas, lack of imagination, difficulty expressing, spelling, difficulty in motor abilities, spatial issues. They might be falling short of words, difficulty in structuring the sentence, lack of knowledge of the topic, lack of focus, vocabulary gets limited. There's confusion between letters B and D, difficulty with grammar, sequencing, difficulty with writing letters, difficulty in expression and generalization of topic, track of thought gets disturbed, comprehensive writing, expressing thoughts is difficult. They find it difficult to coordinate their fingers to write sentences, problem in recalling life incidents, putting thoughts into words, difficulty processing information, difficulty writing on the line.
Okay, I think that has been a very, very exhaustive list. Thank you, participants, for all those wonderful thoughts that you've shared. Yes, I'm just going to sum up whatever you've said already. One is unable to compose complete and grammatically correct sentences, with the correct punctuation. Difficulty organizing information, as you all have said. And maybe their oral expression, when they express their ideas orally, it is stronger and better than what they put on paper. So oral expression may be stronger than written expression. Poor writing fluency. Poor writing fluency refers to, the speed and accuracy with which they write. So they may be very slow, or they may be, writing fast, but with a lot of errors. or it may be a combination of both. So poor writing fluency can be one factor. Extremely weak proofreading skills. That is, even when they write, they don't realize that they have made so many errors in their writing. So being unaware of the errors that they are making, and and usually when we look through the children's writing pieces, many of them will have so many glaring errors throughout their writing piece, even though their ideas may be there. Then, of course, difficulties in the cognitive processing skills. Like we talked about all the cognitive processing skills. If they have difficulties in attention, in perception, in in putting fine putting thoughts on paper, visual motor coordination, all these affect. Since they all have to work in perfect sync, if there are if they don't work in sync, if there are glitches in their cognitive processing, all this will definitely affect even their expressive writing skills. So what can we do to help these children? What do we have to think about when we start working with writing skills in children with special needs? Since you all said that these are the problems they face, can you think of some ideas on how we can overcome or circumvent these challenges? I would like the participants to come forth with the ideas, please.
Giving clues, practicing sentence strips, writing essays, giving more time to the child, creative writing materials, mind maps, using visual cues. Basic principles of writing can be strengthened. Break down the topics into steps, giving helping words, playing games on matching phrases, giving up fill in the blanks, making sentences, closure activities, lot of mind maps, sky writing, repetition and practice of writing, using pictures, reading storybooks. Can crosswords also help? Um, Assessing their present level using graphic organizers, worksheets on phonics, word wall, story reading, picture for help, just for writing, stroke, scribbling, lazy 8 and drawing, association, using pictures, reading to them, then asking them to write, tracing, going in a step-by-step gradual starting of work, sequencing activities, practice exercises, and using phonics words as a tool for writing. Cognitive map, practicing reading every day, pre-writing activities, storytelling, buddy reading, role playing, frequent practice, brainstorming with the child, starting with fill in the blanks, team writing activities, and using speech to text activities. Doodles, writing games, fill in the blanks, writing every day, using visual images, creating an interest, syllables reading, robust sheets, matching activities, listen and write, puppet show, blending and segmenting, think, pair, share, dramatization, sentence formation, Scrabble, using crossword puzzles, writing journals, visual story prompts, appreciation and reinforcement, describing describing the object in one word, improving working memory, starting with simple topics like show and tell, letting the child describe, flashcards, outlining. Yes, on these lines.
Okay, yes, a very, very, very exhaustive list. Thank you to the participants for being such engaged learners and bringing forth your ideas. I'll just sum up basically what you have already said. Yes, start from the current level of the child, wherever the child's level of functioning is, start from that level and then build upwards. Make writing meaningful to the child. So, when we are talking about, say, writing a sentence, connect it with what the child already knows. So if you're asking them to write about something that they already know, the background knowledge is more is there already, and therefore when they're writing about it, it is more meaningful. So meaningfulness adds on to or eases the difficulty that they have in writing. Encourage imitation. So sometimes they may not be able to entirely write by themselves, but they may listen to somebody else say it and transcribe it, or they may just, if somebody else has made a sentence, they can make similar sentences on the same in the same pattern. So encourage imitation activities. And then specifically targetedly teach spelling skills and grammar skills. So, we need to really understand, because we've already talked about how listening, speaking, reading, comprehension all contribute to the emergence of written expression. So therefore, working on all those skills already does contribute to the building up of written skills. So to develop writing skills in children, we have to encourage sentence construction. So initially, you can start off with oral sentence construction, and very rightly so, many of you did mention about, um, show and tell and these kind of activities, brainstorming, etc. So having oral discussions or basically talking about what they're going to write or what they have to write, being able to orally construct sentences, whether it is in response to a question asked or whether it is in response to something that they have read about or they're relating an experience, whatever it is, encourage sentence construction. A lot of our children tend to give one word or two-word phrase answers, and even if they have the ability of sentence talking in sentences, they tend to be very minimal when they give or even in oral utterances, especially when it comes to answering questions asked by the teacher, etc. Or if they are doing a show and tell, or somewhere where their oral skills are put on display. They do tend to be very brief and not speak in sentences, even if they have the ability to do so. So encourage that if they give, say, yes or no answers, ask them to say it further. And I sometimes start with something very simple, just to convey the idea that they need to speak in sentences. I sometimes tell them, okay, if I ask a question, what is your name? And if they just say their name, for example, Geetha, then I would tell them, no, that is just your name, but I want your answer in a complete sentence. So what is your name? So you have to say, my name is, and then add on your name. So that is how I want you to give answers. So give simple examples, relatable examples like this to children, so that they know that when they give answers to you, they have to construct those sentences and start off orally well before you get into writing. Whenever children are being, whenever you're doing listening, speaking activities, encourage oral sentence construction. If they have the oral sentence construction, enough and more experience of oral sentence construction, it is much easier and it is more smoother to convert it into writing sentences. Teach narrative writing, and this is something we all do. A lot of educators, right from kindergarten, grade 1 area, classes, if you've taught these young classes, we do a lot of narrative writing. Some people also call it journal writing. When we say narrative writing, it is speaking about an experience or explaining something that you've had. So as I said, it could be, okay, where did you go during the weekend? And I went to the park in the weekend. So that could be a narrative writing because it's a lived experience. Or you can ask about, what is the special food you had for a dinner yesterday night? Or if there was a festival that you were celebrating, talk about that. Or if you've had a field trip from the school, you can ask questions regarding that. So teach writing where they're narrating their life experiences or their lived experiences. So that becomes a good starting point to be able to convey what they already know, what they already have experienced into sentence form, and therefore you can then work on how the sentence needs to be constructed, then the mechanics of the writing, where what words can be used, the spellings, the punctuation, and the other aspects that go with sentence writing. But whenever you teach narrative writing, basically it is trying to translate their experience or their thought onto the into words, and into words that will form a proper sentence. So narrative writing is a good starting point to start off with. Provide editing and revision instruction. This is something a lot of children with challenges have trouble with. Even so-called neurotypical or regular school children do have a difficulty with editing and revision. But our children, the children who have challenges, definitely need to be provided targeted instruction on how to edit and revise their work. So if they've just written, say if they've done a fill in the blanks, or if they've written a sentence on their own, always encourage them to reread that, go back, check whether they've made any mistakes, check whether they've missed out something before they give it to you for submission. So teaching them how to go back and revise the work that they've done helps them to realize where they're making the mistakes and fix those mistakes before it is even given to the teacher for submission. And this part, where how they go back, revise, recheck, and reformulate their writing, or improve upon their written skills, makes them aware of the kind of errors they're making. It gives them a chance to correct themselves before it is put up for grading, or put up to for final submission to the teacher. And it teaches them that they should not always just do a first hand writing and then just give it up, because there could be errors. So they have to go back and recheck. So providing targeted instruction in how to go back and getting them into the practice and habit of going back and rechecking their written work is very important. Use multisensory activities to teach, and then very skill specific based customized worksheets. So whatever you're trying to teach, use the multimodality learning approach combined with worksheets, because ultimately we are talking about writing, which is usually on paper. So the thought process can be triggered using a lot of multisensory activities, and the final product usually it is in in the form of worksheets. Excuse me. So skills, when we talk about skills in sentence writing, today we are going to deal in length about how to write a sentence, how to formulate a sentence, what are the things we need to look at when we teach children how to form a sentence. First thing is being able to read, say, and then copy sentences. Start with something very basic. Give basic correct sentences, so they have good model sentences from which they can read, they can say it, they can read it, and then they can copy it. So it starts off basically with good modeling and imitation of sentences. And then they can also read or say words, say some key words, build an idea around it to make a sentence. So for example, you're talking about, like the earlier example I gave, weekend. And then, okay, build an idea around the weekend. Say something about the weekend so that you make a sentence about the weekend. So give them one or two words and ask them to either read upon it or say something that relates to that one or two words you've provided, so that a sentence is formed. And if there are mistakes in what they say, you can always, go back and correct them and say, this is how you say it. So basically, getting them to understand how you put together words and form and express a complete idea when you're saying it, conveying the idea, conveying the thought. So using the right words and so on. Again, this is very closely linked with speaking and listening skills, and a lot of modeling and imitation goes into these exercises. Grammar. Grammar is where, they have to understand what is a good sentence, how the words have to be, placed. Uh, should the noun come first, or should the verb come first? Or, how the word order is placed in the sentences so that it makes sense when you read it. So, and when you teach different concepts of grammar, the key things you have to teach is what is the concept. Um, that is, suppose you're teaching you're teaching sentences. You have to initially tell them, okay, what is a sentence? Sentence means it has certain things, 2 or 3 or 4 points. So teach the core concept when you're teaching the grammar. Then, of course, give a lot of exercises, both oral and written, with those grammar. Draw their attention to the whatever grammar concept you're teaching, even when you're doing the reading exercises and so on, when you're doing reading lessons and so on. And then apply them. Give them application oriented exercises, especially written exercises, where they have to apply what they have learned. So if they've learned, say, nouns, verbs, and certain grammar concept on what is a sentence, then apply those concepts when they are actually writing a sentence. So any grammar concept, for that matter, when you teach, you start with the core concept, you give them certain oral and written exercises, and then you give them application oriented exercises. And some of the things that we start off with when we start with basic writing is sentences, different kinds of sentences. That is, statements, which are telling sentences, sentences that tell an idea or tell some information. Questions, those are asking sentences where somebody is asking something. And a lot of times you use the WH words, that is what, where, when, why, who, etc. And there can also be question or asking sentences which don't have these question words, like did you go for a walk, or have you completed your work, and so on. So introducing them to different kinds of questions or asking sentences. Exclamatory sentences, that is, sentences which convey a very strong feeling, maybe a strong feeling of fear or surprise, or if somebody is shouting. So, those kind of sentences are exclamatory sentences, something which convey a very strong feeling. So teaching them about the different kinds of sentences, naming and telling parts of sentences, that is the subject part and predicate part of sentences. Teaching them about nouns, that is naming words, which are for person, place, animals, or things. Verbs, that is action words. And then, of course, the being verbs, which are talking about the present, the past, and future tenses. So the use of is, am, was, where, will, and so on. Adjectives, descriptive words, the words that can be used to describe color, shape, size, number, feeling, weather, etc. And then pronouns that are, those are words which can be used instead of the nouns. So, use of the I, he, she, it, they, etc. So all these are all basic grammar concepts which contribute to sentence writing and, early sentence writing. So you will find in most of the literacy programs, along with reading and writing, when it comes to reading and comprehension, when it comes to grammar and writing, you'll have, these grammar concepts being introduced. So whenever they're doing any reading or writing activities, connect the grammar. Don't, quite often we find in schools, grammar is taught just as grammar. It is not overtly connected to what they're reading. So even if they're reading a story, and suppose you're teaching statements, question, and exclamatory sentences in the grammar lesson, when they read a story, if they look at a sentence, ask them to pick out, okay, which are the statements in that story, or ask them to show which are the questions or asking sentences from that story. So ask them to find out if there are exclamatory sentences in that story. So try and connect whatever grammar you're doing. Don't keep the grammar exercises isolated and in a box when you're doing grammar lessons, but rather connect it to whatever, whether they are to their oral utterances, to their reading material, and so on. And that goes for every, I've just given an example, but that goes for all the, all the other grammar concepts as well. For example, if you're teaching nouns, you can ask them to read a particular story or a lesson in their reader and ask them to pick out all the nouns that they find in the story. So making those connections, our children do have difficulty making those connections. So make those connections when you're teaching, these skills, so that they all culminate together into the process of writing. Same with punctuation. Your use of, basically we start with capitalization and full stop, question mark, exclamation mark, and then we move on to commas and other more complicated punctuation marks. And then all this goes into basic sentences. And then once they learn how to write a basic sentence, a simple sentence, then you can work on adding more details to your sentences. That is, expanding their sentences to become a bit more descriptive, so that the more vocabulary is used, the sentences become more interesting, the sentences add more details about whatever they are writing about. Therefore the communication becomes more elaborate and more effective. So when we talk about different kinds of strategies to build sentence writing, uh, as I said, this is again an example I'm giving. When you talk about sentences, explain to the children that sentence is a set of words, a group of words, which expresses a complete idea in itself. So then, therefore, and there can be different kinds of sentences depending on what the sentence is trying to do. If the sentence is trying to express a strong feeling, or if it's asking something, or if it's telling something. And when you're teaching sentences, get them to understand what are the things a good sentence should have. That it needs to have a group of words. It needs to, express something, express a complete idea. You need to understand completely what the sentence is trying to, convey to you. It needs to, if it's in English, it needs to have a capital letter at the beginning, needs to have an ending punctuation depending on what kind of sentence it is. So if it's a statement, it will have a full stop. If it's a command, again, it might have a full stop or an exclamation. If it's a strong feeling sentence, it would have an exclamatory mark. If it's an asking sentence, it will have a question mark, and so on. So, and then whether the words are in correct order, have a look at the words, whether they are placed in the correct order, so that it conveys an effective meaning. It makes sense. Whether the sentence has a naming part or a subject part. That is, if the sentence has a who or what the sentence is about part. And then what the who or the what of noun is telling or doing. That is a predicate part. So these things put together makes a good sentence. So getting the children to understand that a good sentence needs to have these kind of components. So we can start off with simple activities, and I've shown some worksheets here. You can also do this through, multimodal activities, modality activities. Identifying, reading a sentence and matching it to a picture. So, understanding that this picture goes with these set of words which convey the idea about the picture correctly. So sentence match can be one activity. Another activity can be where you give some groups of words which are real sentences and some groups of words which are not complete sentences. So like in the second worksheet from the left, you find sentence and not a sentence. So understanding what is a real sentence, what is not a sentence. So you can have, like, for example, today is my birthday. It conveys a complete idea and it has all the right punctuations, the capital at the beginning, the full stop at the end. Therefore, it is a correct sentence. Whereas the second one, the race, it doesn't give a complete idea of what it is talking about. There's no capitalization. There's no end mark punctuation. Therefore, you do not know what it is talking about. So therefore, that's not a sentence. So being able to identify what is a sentence and what is not a sentence, complete or incomplete sentences, that can help. And then you can give fill in the blanks activities like some of you have already mentioned in the earlier interaction we had, where certain words are missing and they have to put those words in so that they make the sentence complete. So doing activities like these really help. And sentence building activities, you can also have sentence strips where you cut the strips into, say, a naming part and a telling part, or a subject and predicate part of the sentences. And the children have to join the parts to make a complete, sensible sentence that conveys meaning. You can also use, you can see the left hand where the two sentence strips are given and they have to match it to make sentences. You can provide picture clues or something to go with it so that they know which parts to match so as to go with with the picture. You can also have something like a jigsaw puzzle, like the one in the center that you see, where the sentence is chopped up into different words, and there are pictures. So when the picture is complete, the sentence is also complete. So to teach word order, this is a nice visual way of teaching word order. You can also give random flashcard words and ask them to play around with these flashcard words and build a sentence. So basically, do these kind of sentence building activities and using different kinds of learning materials. You can also have games where you give, you can add on things. If you look at the left hand side part of it, the sentence building game, where there are the subject, the helping verbs, or the action words, or the prepositions and the object. So here again, the sentence is getting longer, where they can put in different kinds of subjects, different kinds of helping words, and do a mix and match to make different kinds of sentences. So you can give, and these can be given in the form of a list or in the form of flashcards. If they're given in the form of flashcards, they can actually do the physical manipulation and build. But you can also give it on this thing where they just draw lines to match, and then they can write it down and see whether it makes sense. So basically, sentence building activities. You can also provide pictures with clue words, like you see the one in the middle, where the target word is by, and there is a picture given where there's a box and an ant or a bug standing next to the box. So now the child has to weave an idea about it. So, something like the bug is standing by the box, or the bug stands by the box. And if you want to ask them to elaborate on it, I got the child to color the picture. So then the child can add on, instead of saying just the bug, they can say, okay, the red bug stands by the box has been colored brown. So the adds on one more word and says the red bug stands by the brown box. So you can get them to make a simple sentence first, and then add on more attributes like coloring or size or something, and ask them to, depending on the ability of the child, the grade level that they're going to, ask them to add more descriptive details and expand upon the sentences. You can also do role play activities where you can get them to be two characters in the story that they've possibly already read, and each character is mouthing the words or the lines, the sentences that they have to say. Or you can give a given situation and then ask them to role play. One can be a teacher, the other can be a student, and tell them, okay, the student has done something wrong, broken something in the classroom. So this is a dialogue between the teacher and the child. So they have to role play as teacher and child, and have a conversation where they're, orally mouthing the sentences. And once they've done that, you can get them to write it, or you can, as a teacher, you can write it on the board, and then they can put them together. This can also be done as a group activity where two people can take on the role play, and the others in the group can do the writing part of the sentences that they are saying or transcribing it. So all these kind of activities help with sentence building. Reading, saying, and copying sentence sample activities. So you can actually, like we said earlier, matching sentences to the pictures. It could be, they can say the sentence aloud, count how many words are in the sentence. A lot of times what we find is when they say it correctly, but by the time they put it on paper, some of the words are missing, and they don't realize that they've made a mistake. So, it's always when they've said it and then they're going to transcribe and write it down, ask them to say the sentence and count how many words are there. So, if, for example, if they're saying, this is a bag, that's a sentence they're saying, and that's what they're going to write. So, say, this is a bag. So, there are four words. And so for some children, they may not still be, even if you say four, by the time they write it down, they still forget it was four. So probably, for such children, you may have to provide certain visuals. You can put a line, one for each word. So then they realize that if they've missed any word, they know they have to go back and say the sentence again, and then put each of those words. And if there are four, if this is a bag has four words, then give four blanks, where one blank stands for each word that they have to write. Just like we, in the earlier workshops, when we talked about phonics, we said when they are phonetically sounding out and writing the words, you ask them to map the words, where you give blanks for each of the sounds that they have to write when they're phonetically spelling the word. Similarly, you do a similar kind of thing when they're doing sentence writing. You give blanks for the sentences for each of the words, so that they're mapping the words onto the sentence. And this is particularly for children who, when they say the correct sentence, but when they write it, they miss out certain words. And then, of course, write it down. And then after they've written the sentence, get them to reread it. Remember, I told you they have to learn how to proofread it and recheck whether they've written it correctly or not. So get them into the habit of doing that. You can also give a model sentence where, they can trace the sentence, then write the sentence, and then you can, the same sentence, they can have little flashcards where they can cut and paste the flashcards and then build the sentence. So doing different activities where they're tracing, writing, so it gives a good modeling, imitation, and a hands-on activity. So it is multisensorial in that sense, and they can learn how to read, say, copy, and then write and build good sentences. Giving them an idea and, having them build around that idea. Again, here you can give possible word bank. You can give them a picture as a starter, and the picture can be a prompt from which they can have to generate a sentence. Sometimes you can give a set of words along with the picture, so they have to use those words and then create a sentence that relates to the picture. Sometimes you can just give a picture, once they know. Some of them, they may not need word banks, they may have reasonably good oral skills, or just the picture itself can be a good prompt for them to say the sentence. So give those pictures and give the direction, asking them to write about what the picture is. And sometimes they may write a simple sentence. For example, on the left-hand side, some of the children who have very, limited writing skills, when you ask them to write a sentence, they look at the picture and write, this is a cat. Now, there's more happening in that picture. So you can tell them that this is a hat, this is a cat is okay. But see that it's not just a cat, there's something more in the picture. So, write more about it. So sometimes they'll say, this is a cat and a ball. And then you can refine it further, ask them to be more, elaborate more on that idea. Okay, what is the cat doing with the ball? Ask them clue questions. So instead of saying this is a cat, they can in fact say, the cat is playing with the ball. Or you can say this is a cat and it is playing with the ball. So depending again upon the children, the level of the child, you can prompt them to further and further refine and expand upon the sentences and generate a good sentence. But early on, a basic sentence is enough. As they get more and more comfortable with basic simple sentences, you can get them to, and if they do not know how to spell some of those keywords like cat or ball or is or with, you can provide those word bank to them, or give a dictionary or a word book where keywords are given and they can refer to the spellings. Or you can even ask them to just do a rough writing draft of the sentence, and you can point out which are the ones that they made mistakes with, especially with the spellings. They can go back and check and recorrect their spellings, etc., with the using a word wall or a word dictionary. Similarly, give activities where word order is important. So give word banks, and they have to put them in the right order. And in the left-hand side worksheet, if you find, they have even mentioned how to check your writing. So whether the capital letter is there. So when they're checking the writing, they have to look for, okay, capital letter. If it's capital letter is there in the sentence, put a tick mark or a check mark. Finger spaces, whether they've left finger spaces between yes. So this is a process of teaching them how to proofread and edit their own work. Punctuation, whether at the end of the sentence, a full stop or a question mark or an exclamation mark has been put. Then read it and see whether the sentence makes sense. So how to go about checking and editing and proofreading and rechecking their written sentence can also be taught through effective worksheets like this. Or even the check your writing part of it, you can put it up on the board. You can have a little anchor chart on the wall where they can, or on the board when they're doing sentence writing, asking them, this is how you have to check each of the sentences you have written. Check for capitals, check for finger spaces, check for punctuation, read and see whether it makes sense. Or if if it doesn't make sense, maybe some words are missing, or maybe something is not expressed correctly, and so on. So get them into the habit of doing this. You can also have a promote sentence writing through sequences, where you have done a particular activity, and that activity is sequenced in the order of how it has been performed. Now, for example, in the second worksheet, it talks about sequence writing, where I went to my friend's house. Okay, that's a base sentence. The child has gone to the friend's house. And then they're talking about the different things they did there or saw there. So first, I saw his, and then there's a blank. So here you have some beginning part of the sentence. The sentence starters have been provided, and then they have to complete it. So again, using a sequence of an event that they have done or a lived experience can also help them to generate and write good sentences. Teaching, so we talked about identifying good sentences, not good sentences, how to make a sentence, read it, say it, build it. Now we come to how we can join sentence parts, the naming parts, telling parts of subject and predicate, and how it makes a good sentence. So show children how this can be done, and you can provide different, again, you can give sentence starters where the naming part is already there and they have to complete the telling part to complete the sentence. The reverse can also be done, where you can provide uh, the the ending part, the predicate or the telling part of the sentence, and they have to write the starting or the naming part of the sentence. So complete the sentence worksheets where naming or telling parts have to be completed, where part of the sentence frame is provided in the worksheet or the teacher's providing. They can also, from given modeled sentences, they can identify which are the naming parts, telling parts, combine them, and so on. And you can also get them to change this. So if there is one particular naming part you've used, for example, the dogs ran in the park. The dogs is the naming part of the sentence. Ask them to put different naming parts, and ran in the park is the telling part of the sentence. But the put different naming parts for the same telling part and make more sentences. Similarly, the reverse can also be done. The dogs can remain constant, and they can keep changing the telling part of the sentence. Instead of the dogs ran in the park, you can have the dogs got a bone, the dogs did not like to have a bath, or something like that. So where so many different combinations, permutations and combinations can be used to help them to model, build, say, and ultimately write good sentences. Punctuation, you can also have targeted activities where punctuation is used, which punctuations are basically symbols which are used to separate written sentences or parts of sentences. And punctuation adds on to the meaning or the tonality of the sentence to more clearly communicate what the sentence is trying to say. So you can have, worksheets like these where, they have to cut and paste, or they have to just add on, write and add on, read the sentence, think about what kind of sentence is it? What is the purpose of the sentence? Is it telling something? Is it asking something? Is it expressing something in a very strong feeling like, uh, a surprise or, a command or something? And accordingly, you decide what punctuation to use. When you're doing reading lessons also, draw their attention to these kind of things. You can, when they've read a particular sentence in the story and they read, you can ask them, do you think this is a telling sentence? If it is having a exclamation a mark at the end of the sentence, so do you think it is just a statement, or a question, or an exclamation? Why is there an exclamation mark at the end of the sentence? Why is there a question? And even getting them to read it that way. For example, if you're reading an asking sentence or a question, read it in the tone of asking a question rather than reading it in a monotonous way. If it is an exclamatory sentence, read it with that kind of elation. So when you say hurry, it's raining, have the hurry in a very exaggerated manner, so that they understand that punctuation is there for a reason. It is used to convey the meaning of the words in a more effective manner. Give lots of sample activities in the form of worksheets. You can give sentences which are not punctuated correctly, or paragraphs which are not punctuated correctly, and ask them to fix the mistakes, the punctuation errors. Or you can give sentences and ask them to put in the right punctuation. So use these kind of things. Again, here use like if you look at the worksheet on the right hand side, again there they have put in all the things that they have to look into. The revision proofreading part of it. At the end of the 5 sentences, they have to check and see, I use capital letters in all the sentences. I use spaces, finger spaces when writing. I use the correct punctuation. So, again, getting them into the habit of revising and proofreading their own sentences. And then we come to expanding sentences or adding more details. And this helps develop creativity. It helps them to, communicate more effectively what they're trying to say. So in the example given here, you can ask certain clue questions to help them expand on their sentences. She picked apples as a basic sentence. So you can ask who picked apples. So add, an element, Mary picked apples. And then, okay, how many apples did Mary pick? So adding, Mary picked 8 apples or a dozen apples. Then why did she pick? So add that also onto the sentence. So you basically end up trying to expand or adding more and more descriptive details so that the sentence length gets longer, because this is one problem a lot of our children have. They stick to basic sentences only, and they are very hesitant to add on details and expand. So this helps in moving them from the basic sentence level to writing more complicated sentences with more details, with more vocabulary. And some of the sample activities is, you can give break it up, and you can ask them to add on more and more details to it. So give those clues for the details. What is it that they can add on? You can add on by using coordinating conjunctions. So you can use words like for, and, but, etc. All these can be used to add details. You can use descriptive words such as, even if you give the same repetitive sentences like I am, but depending on what the descriptions you're adding, you can change the pattern of your sentences and you can add more details. So when you're basically stretching a sentence, you can use worksheets like this, which talks about what you're talking about, where it is, with what it is going to do, what is it looking for, why is it doing such and such a thing. So if you start with what, for example, my pet, so is where, add the where part of it. So my pet is at home. With what? That's another clue question you're adding on. So my pet is with the boy. And why is it with the boy? So adding on another detail, my pet is with the boy because he likes him, or something like that. So, these are actual activities on how you can stretch a sentence. These are worksheets, but you can also do these in group activities where you can have a small group of children. One child says one part of the sentence, the second person adds on to what the first child has said, and so on. They can go on adding more and more details until they make a nice, really long, stretchy sentence. So you can start off with basic sentences and get them into do these exercises, where they can have to add on details. So several, you can also give two sentences which they have to combine and expand. So, you can give, I am a boy, I am 6 years old, and then ask them to combine these sentences and make a bigger sentence. Instead of having two small sentences, combine it to make a bigger sentence. So again, these activities can be worked on. So with that, we come to the end of today's workshop. We have actually gone through, how listening, speaking, reading, comprehension will and would contribute to expressive writing skills, and how they all have to be taken together and in synchronization, even when you're planning your lessons and activities. How you have to make those connections between the speaking, listening, reading, comprehension, as well as grammar skills, and then sentence get into sentence formation and written expression. Building writing skills needs to target the specific reading skills, such as phonics and sight words and comprehension. So all the things that we talked about in the earlier workshops, if you're teaching certain phonics and certain sight words, use those phonics and sight words to help them build oral as well as written sentences. So that whole continuum of LSRW skills are built, and get them to make those sentences orally, and then slowly get into writing of those sentences. So being able to connect whatever reading and comprehension skills you're doing with the writing is very important, and it needs to go hand in hand. Enhancing grammar has also to include teaching spellings, which can be taught through when you're doing reading itself, when you're doing phonetics, when you're doing phonics instruction, sight word vocabulary, you can teach the spellings of those words as well, so that, and then use those for in your sentence formation and writing. Similarly, when you teach grammar and punctuation, try and use the same words that you took up for phonics instruction, or that you're targeting for your sight words, or that you're targeting in a particular reading lesson in your English reader. So use the very same material over and over again. So it provides repetition, it becomes meaningful. The child is already very familiar with those words, and then use that for writing. So you're starting from a known springboard, and then you can go on to, so that makes writing more meaningful. And or you start from something that they have experienced, so that it becomes more part of narrative writing. So when they have to create a sentence with words, with they're not totally unfamiliar with what they're going to, the topic that they're going to write about. And then of course, since our children have cognitive processing difficulties and different kinds of challenges, multimodality, multisensory learning is very important, because they also have attention issues and such. So all the time just using paper pencil activities don't help. You have to have a healthy blend of worksheets. Again, choose the worksheets that you're targeting the skills on. So skill specific targeted worksheets along with multisensory multimodality learning, and all these together will help us to teach them how to generate a sentence orally, and then finally produce it in writing on paper. So that comes to, with that, we come to an end of today's session. Um, it was a very, I think if you followed the earlier workshops, this is kind of a very simple workshop that, as an extent, it is almost an extension of the earlier workshops we've had in this series. If there are any question and answers, I'm open to the Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Geetha ma'am, for sharing your knowledge. It was a very informative and practical hands-on strategies workshop. I'm sure the participants would agree with me on this. Dear participants, the feedback link is now being shared in the chat box. Do give your feedback, where 1 stands for scope of improvement and 5 is you have loved the workshop. So now let me take you through this, where all of you are excited about receiving the slide deck and the presentation and resources from our expert speaker. Now you can check out the links in the chat box and get access to the event takeaways, that is the slides deck, the overview document, the resources, and the recording will be available in the next 3 to 4 working days. You'll also know about the upcoming events. If you have enjoyed being a part of today's session, you can help us by spreading awareness. You can share this certificate program that's ongoing or the past ones that you have benefited from to others. You could also share these resources and help children with special needs achieve better outcomes. You could also become Abilities Inclusion Champion, where you'll be an advocate for Abilities Mission and bring about the change to the world. Let me tell you about the upcoming events. On the 24th of March, we have Improving Sitting Tolerance in Children with ADHD by Dr. Priyanka Halvasya. Then we have on 31st March, Enhancing Expressive Writing Skills in Children with Special Needs, the advanced level by Madam Geetha Gopi N. These will be at 4:30 p.m. India time, 6 p.m. Indonesia time, 7 p.m. Singapore and Philippines time. Do forward the links to those whom you think can benefit from it. So now we'll move on to the questions. Are you ready for the first question, Geetha ma'am?
Yes.
Great. So the first question is from Markina Gracia. She wants to understand what kind of an environment is suitable for teaching young minds to write creatively.
Anything that is positive and encouraging. And as I said, children love to communicate if the topic that you're, if the topic relates to them. So as I said, start with something that they know about, or start with something that they have already experienced. It could be something that they have, if they've gone to a park, for example, start asking them questions based on what they did in the park, how did they play, what were the different, things in the park, what did they enjoy the most, what is the thing in the park that they do not like. So try and relate it to as much as possible to their lived experiences. That is a very, very good start. You can also use your show and tell activities. So, if it is, they can bring a picture, or they can bring a toy, or they can bring any object from home, like a cooking utensil or anything at all, even a family photograph, and then start talking about it. So basically, when we say writing, expressive writing, it all comes, there has to be a germinating idea. And when we have to focus on sentence construction, it is important that at least the topic is known to them or they're familiar with. So when that is a familiar point, then you can devote more time to how the sentence should be constructed, what should the sentence start off with, and how the words should progress in when you're constructing the sentence and so on. So initially, when you're starting off with working on sentence construction, start from something that they know already about. It can be as simple as, how did you come to school today? So I came to school by car or by the school bus. Start with something like that, something simple, relatable, easy. And whenever you're doing writing, I mean, for example, if you ask a child to write about a snowy day, how was this about a snow? How is it on? How do you feel on a snowy day? Or what is the weather like on a snowy day? When they have never experienced snow in their lives, it doesn't make sense, right? So always start off with something that they have experienced or something that they really know about. And it is there are so many such instances. Even if they've brought some lunch, or they have their pencil pouches, they have asked them, okay, each one can take out their pencil and ask them to say something about their pencil, for example, as simple as that. So connect it to something that they know. That is very, very important, because already being able to construct a sentence is a task in itself. So at least the knowledge part of it, the idea part of it, should be relatable for the child. So start off from there.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Going from the known to unknown will actually help the child to benefit. Now we have a question from Ugain Dem. Wants to understand that he has a special child in his class. The child can understand the theory part but has difficulty in writing. What can he do to help the child better to develop the writing skills?
See, we talked about the building blocks of the sentences, right? So get the child to build a sentence and then probably write it. If you ask them to just write from memory, they may have difficulty. So it is especially with those children, where you need to use the different word flashcards. Give it to the child. Ask them to put it together like a jigsaw puzzle. Add on those words, and initially you can give, when you're giving the word flashcards, suppose for example you're giving I see a cat as a sentence. Okay, you can have each of those words as flashcards. You can have the I in capital, because that should come at the beginning of the sentence when you're making the flashcard, and have the full stop next to the cat word. So the cat word should have the full stop on the flashcard with it. Or sometimes what I even do, so the child then knows that, okay, the one with the capital goes at the beginning, the word cat with the full stop, that flashcard goes at the end. And then they have to play with the other two words like C and A, put those in order, turn them around, put them in whichever order and read it and see which one makes sense. So that is one clue to start off. That is one wholesome support to start off with. Then sometimes what I do is I give all the word flashcards, and I even give the full stop or the end punctuation mark as a separate flash. So then the child has to arrange. And there you can provide clues, what is a good say. If the child knows the theory, ask them to retell the theory part of it. What is a good sentence? So a good sentence should have a group of words. Okay, I've given you the group of words with all these flashcards. And then a good sentence should begin with a capital letter. So then, okay, let's look at the flashcards that have been given. Pick out the one with the capital letter and put it first. And then a good sentence should end with a full stop or a punctuation mark. So let us find the flashcard which has a punctuation mark. Let's put that at the end. Now we have the remaining flashcards. So let's, by trial and error, arrange those words in a certain order, read it, see whether it makes sense. So these are the ways to do it. Get them to do it hands-on. And provide these clues and supports and initially, and then as the child progresses, you can, you don't have to make the flashcard in capitals, and you don't have to put the flashcard with the punctuation. You can separate all this and get the child to put these as when they read the sentence and figure out what needs to be put according the right punctuation that needs to be. So start off with maximum support, and then so get them to make it, build it, and then write it down.
Thank you for these wonderful strategies, ma'am. Now we have a question from Sanjeevani Kathawale, who wants to know a technique. How can we help bring about a shift in children from answering objective type questions to writing elaborate but specific answers?
I normally tell the children, that is why correct instructions need to be given, because when even if it's a reading comprehension exercise, for example, the child has to read a small passage or a 2 or 3 line story and then answer the questions. I usually give the instruction in writing at the top, answer the following questions, write in complete sentences. And then I rehearse that with the children, like you have to answer it, but your answers need to be in complete sentences. And I might even go and rehearse what is a complete sentence. The complete sentence means your sentence needs to have a set of words which should be in a proper order, so that when you read it, it makes sense. A complete sentence should have a capital letter at the beginning, all the punctuation and the end punctuation. So make sure you have this. And remember when I showed you some of the samples of the worksheets, and at the bottom of the worksheet, they had what they have to recheck when they have already finished writing the sentence and they're proofreading it. So you can put those things there. Every worksheet may not have those things. Why I gave you those samples were, in fact, what I used to do when I taught was I used to have these recheck instructions laminated, typed and laminated, and I would put it up when they're doing sentence writing. So even if they've been given the task of writing sentences and they've finished and they say they're ready to submit, I usually point to the board where I've hung or written down the instruction, and I ask them in each sentence, check all this. Number one, did it begin with a capital letter? Number two, did you read it and did it make sense? Number three, is there a punctuation, finger spacing between the words? Number four, is there a punctuation mark at the end? Did you miss out on the punctuation mark? So put all those, the checkers, the points for checking that needs to go in, and get them into the habit of doing this. And if there are 5 comprehension answers they have to write, for all 5, they have to go through all these things. And normally you'll find children, what happens is the first 2, they will write complete sentences, and the next 2 or 3 will be in 1 word or 2 word phrases. Therefore, when they give it up for submission or they're ready, before when they say they're ready itself, tell them for each question number 1, do all this checklist, check off all these things, whether you've done it. Number 2, number 3. And sometimes if they say, yes, I've done, I still go over to them. And if I find that some of the sentences are incomplete, I would say, okay, number 1 and 2, you've checked all the things that needed to be done. You followed all the instructions. Perfect. But the other 2, you need to go back and, recheck on all the instructions given and correct it. So get them into the habit of those rechecking, proofreading, and instruct them on how to revise their own work.
So the practice and right instructions will help the child to develop the skills. Now we have the question from Shiara Challenge. She wants to understand tips from your end on how to make writing more fun for kindergartens. She also has an extended question where she states that she has a kid who always feels pressurized and stressed about writing sentences because the other children around him writes faster and better. In spite of lot of encouragement from her end as a teacher, the kid feels frustrated when he or she is not able to write faster than the others. Is this just a phase in the kindergartens, or are there any strategies to help them?
With some children, they may have fine motor issues that developmentally they may not be mature enough to write these sentences. So what you have to do for such children is probably provide some accommodations and modifications. So for example, if for the rest of the class, they have to write a complete sentence all by themselves, for this child, you can give part of the sentence, you can give a sentence starter. So you can give part of the sentence already printed, and the child has to only write the other part of the sentence to complete it. So you're taking the amount of writing, you're reducing the amount of writing away from the child. Also, if you say, for example, you're giving, say, the whole class has to write 5 sentences. You've given 5 words, you have asked them to make 5 sentences, 1 out of each word. So probably for this child, you can say, okay, you can do any 3, or you can do any 2, pick and choose. So initially start off with reduced work, that helps. Or reduce the work either in the number of sentences or writing amount you're giving, or as I said, do part of the sentence you give the worksheet as part of the sentence is already given, the child only has to complete, so the amount of writing gets reduced. So the child gets a sense of being able to complete on time. With a lot of children, especially in the early years, not just in kindergarten, even in grade 1 and 2, we find sometimes if they are younger, even with the regular children who don't have any special needs issues, you find if one child is say 3 years, 5 years, 6 months, and another child is 5 years, you'll find a big difference. And in those early years, there's a big difference in the in their physical skills, how their developmental maturity. So some of them may write with a lot of, effort. Some of them may write very slowly and so on. So it could just be a developmental thing. You'll have to wait and watch and see. So until then, that is why we say we need to provide differentiated instruction. Don't give the same thing for all the children. If you know these children are, whether they have special needs or not, if they're struggling to keep up, then reduce the amount of work, or make it simpler to start off with and gradually increase it to the level that is required in grade level. Also, what you can do is you can also give timers. So sometimes you have these little hourglass, you have these 1 minute, 2 minute hourglass things, or you can have a real timer where you can, the buzzer goes off, where the child is given a certain amount of time and the child has to finish. Initially start off with what is achievable by the child, and slowly then increase the amount of time or up the amount of work for that particular time. So take it very gradually, step by step. And if the child has anxiety issues, I think it is important, once you put a lot of these modifications in place, a lot of the anxiety is reduced. But if the child still has anxiety, it is good to do a lot of hand exercises and all. And I'm sure when you did the previous workshop in the handwriting, where the handwriting part of it was dealt with, we tell the children to do a lot of squeeze ball activities, or fine motor activities, which will strengthen their muscles and or reduce the fatigue and so on. So in even the correct posture, laying the hand, a lot of times I find nowadays schools don't take proper care in ensuring the children are sitting in the correct posture and writing properly. So even, where to rest suppose you're a right-handed person, if you're holding the pencil in the right hand, how to rest your hand on the table, what to do with your left hand, so that it provides better support and ease in writing. All that is very important. So, instructing the child and insisting that they follow these, the right posture and all that helps. And also, getting them interested, lightening, if the writing per se is creating a tense situation, lighten it by using, start with a toy that the child likes or something, so squeeze the toy a little bit and then let's write a sentence about it. So that is fine. And sometimes I even use things like, use a squeeze ball, or take a normal ball and just throw, like one person throws to the other, they catch it. So it becomes a little game, relaxes them, and then go and write. Even having a drink of water helps, drink water and breathe in, breathe out. Anything that you do for reducing stress, anxiety, and, helping the child be more relaxed. All these actually help. And that is why I said, even though writing is a paper pencil activity, do a lot of multisensory activities and, pair it up with the listening, speaking, and your show and tell or your reading comprehension activities, and then bring it into writing. So then, that eases they're already starting from a known point. So it eases the stress. If they have extreme stress, relaxation exercises are a must.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing this wonderful insight of yours with a lot of activities where keen observation of the child is very important to know what is affecting the performance. Now we have a question from Dorothy Della Pena. Wanted to ask you, how would you teach a poor learner to write creative sentences? Will peer teaching or pairing this poor learner with a fast learner help?
Definitely, peer system really helps. And that's why I said, when you're working on sentence construction, basically, it doesn't always have to be a paper pencil activity. you can have peers, you can have small group situations where, one person says one word, the other person adds on another word, and that's how they make a sentence. They build a sentence. So it doesn't have to be just that one child building a sentence. You can have a little group where they're adding on words to build a sentence. So therefore, probably, and you can place this child in in that group where, a very, a fast learner is next to this child, so that if need be, they can prompt. Also, if you're getting them to make individual sentences, what I normally do is, if I'm throwing open, say, if I give a word to the class and I say, can you make a sentence with it? And the ones who have good language ability, or who are able to form good sentences, will jump up and say this. And then have a few, your better students say a few sentences, and then move on to the ones who are weaker. So at least, even if they're not able to come up with an original sentence, they've at least listened to a lot of other ones, and they might imitate and say a similar sentence. So for example, if I've said, if I've thrown the word have into the classroom and asked them to make a sentence with have. So, some children may be very good and they'll say, something like, what do you have? Make a complicated sentences like that. Some of them might just say, I have a bag. And you'll find usually that the weaker child might just imitate the easy ones, So they'll also go with, I have a, instead of a bag, they might just change it. But sometimes they just repeat what the other one has said. If the child has said, I have a bag, another child has said it, this child will also repeat, I have a bag. That's a good start, actually. So then you can say, okay, he said, I have a bag, but can you change the bag and say, I have a something else? Think of something that you have other than the bag. So you can encourage the child to think, okay, one part of the sentence is already there. I have a is already there. Only the bag needs to be changed. So, or if they don't get it, I just point to some object that they have on their desk. They can just say, if it's a pencil, okay, it's a pencil. So say it, I have a pencil. So you try to elicit sentence making with, providing good models, and imitation is one of the first steps. So yes, it does help when you have peer buddy tutoring.
Thank you for throwing light on the importance of the buddy system. Now we have a question from Orange Irazo, who wanted to know, is there any assessments that can be used or help to know the level of the child in terms of expressive writing?
So there are some standardized tests, but I personally speaking, in all my years of experience, I think criterion reference teacher made tests are the best, to assess. The only thing is you need to know, what is the sequence? So a basic simple sentence, then, expanded sentences, then you move on to paragraphs. And in a paragraph, what are the things you need to look for? So if as a teacher, I know these things, then it's just giving those exercises. So I prefer when I'm doing, when I'm assessing children for expressive writing, I usually start off with, writing a basic sentence, or completing sentence frames is a good start. And then you can give some words or some pictures and ask them to generate a sentence. And based on how the kind of sentences they write. So if I give 5 different pictures, and if all the 5 pictures, they've started the sentence in the exact same way, like I see a cat, I see a man, I see, if it is that, the child doesn't have a lot of vocabulary or a lot of sentence variety in them. What is important is you give these things and you analyze what are the kinds of sentences they're making, whether there is a variety in the sentences, whether they're very short sentences or they're long, whether some details are added on, whether they're making spelling errors with the phonetic words, the common sight words, whether they're forgetting to put capital or putting capitals wherever they choose, without any rhyme or reason, whether they're missing out on punctuation marks. So at least give 5 in each kind. If it's a paragraph, I usually give 1 paragraph. And in 1 paragraph, I usually tell them write 5 to 10 sentences, and then I assess. And it is basically trying to go over the errors they're making. And like whatever rechecking we ask the children to do, we check their work with the same checking, you know, milestones. So whether the sentence word order is correct, whether the punctuation, the capitalization is in the correct places, whether the punctuation is right, whether the words are in the correct, whether the child is missing out words. So that shows you they haven't reread and rechecked. So whether the child is able to proofread. Um, I prefer teacher-made tests because that gives a better insight into children's writing levels. Rather than all you need to know is what are the skills you're going to look for, and then just give, writing pieces and then assess them on what is there in them and what is missing. So if the child is writing repetitive sentences, okay, the child is able to do simple sentences, fine. But then you have to work on the sentence variety, so then you know where to start from.
Teacher-made tests will give a lot of insight into what skill levels are missing and what components have to be built upon. Now we have a question from Felicia Annie Bassi and a few others who want to understand at what age will a child be able to confidently write creatively?
If you look at if I'm talking of the regular school going children, normally sentence writing or basic sentence writing starts towards the end of kindergarten, when, some amount of oral language is already there in them. So they are able to speak in reasonably simple sentences, and then you can start. So there we start off with what is called as journal writing, where they've drawn a picture about something that they did in the class, or this or something like how they came to school, for example. So they may draw a picture with their dad and dad or mom with them in the car or the school bus, and then you ask them to say a sentence about it and then transcribe it onto paper. So generally you can start off with the end of kg2 towards the second half of kg2. Again, it depends on child to child, and I'm talking this about regular school going children. If they're not up to that standard, ask them to just draw a picture and say the sentence, and as a teacher you can write the sentence. So then ask them to read it. So then they understand that what you're saying about the picture can be written down to make those connections. That's important. Or what you can do is, as I said earlier, the child can draw a picture, and then, if they say, I came in the car, or I am in the car, and they've drawn a picture of them in the car. So draw the picture, and then you can say, I am, and then ask the child to complete the rest of it. Again, giving sentence starters. So basically doing these same activities, do them in different ways. That's all. You can start from kindergarten, but remember, with special needs children, they may have a delay, and they may have challenges. So whenever they are up to that kind of a level, that kindergarten kind of a level, you can start off. If they're not ready for writing, don't worry. Get them to orally make sentences, and then by grade 1, generally many of the kids who can do it. Or else what you can do is, like we showed in the activities, when they say the sentence, you write the sentences as in flashcards, and then ask them to make it up, and then they can copy it. So that's how you get started, and slowly you can wean off these activities, and then they can just say it and write it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we have a question from Marini Rosario and a few others who want to know, is it important to use vernacular language of the child to help them form a sentence in the beginning, early learning years of theirs?
It does help. It does help because they're able to, if they're more fluent, orally fluent in their vernacular language or their native language, it helps to uh, give a spring start, a kick start into the other language. But having said that, one has to understand that the word order or the nuances of the language matters. So suppose you're saying something in in a particular language. In certain languages, there's the noun, the verb, and then adjective follows after the verb. Whereas in some languages, you find there's the noun, the adjective, and then the verb comes. So there is, the structure of the sentence differs from language to language. So when you're initially, when you're translating a thought, if their thinking language is their native language and they're more proficient in that, it's a good start, but eventually you have to move on to the language that they're receiving instruction in. So because the how the word order forms grammatically correct sentences changes with the language that is used. So, there your concept of grammar and, providing the right kind of, a lot of right kind of modeling and imitation of the language that they're supposed to learn. If it is English medium of instruction, then yes, use it in that. So that really helps. But yeah, having a native tongue, because the idea is there, you see, and you just have to translate it into the English words. So initially that does help.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We'll take the last question for the day, where a few participants, Archana, Jomer, and others have asked, how can we develop interest in creative writing in children with special needs?
Basic sentence writing is what we dealt with today. So basic sentence writing is okay. All the activities I said, right? As I said, writing is the end product. It is the cumulative product. So you can even have fun outdoor activities, where you take when I said put the flashcards together to make a word, make a sentence. You can take a set of flashcards and, you can have children play a game. So, they can, you can give sentence parts actually. You can give the subject or the naming part of the sentence and telling part of the sentence split up. And when you blow a whistle, the children have to go and find their partner. And if the sentence has a picture to go with it, they need to find the right partner. Or they can find any partner that, the combination of those two phrases will make up a good sentence. So have an outdoor activity. It doesn't have to be, somehow as educators, when we think about writing, it is always tabletop and paper pencil. It doesn't have to be that. They can take a pencil and paper outside, uh, make those sentences, get them to write it. They can sit down on the mat and write it down, and then they can go back to playing again. So they can do different things. It can even be, where you can do it on the board also. You can have these, you can, with the magnet, you can fasten these sentences on the boards and they can do it. So I even used to, put all the tables and chairs onto one side of the classroom and have free space. And within the classroom itself, they have to go round and round. Like I would blow a whistle or play a soft music. When the music stops, they have to find their sentence partners to create a good sentence. So think of these kind of fun activities. And I used to also have team quizzes where one team, there'll be two teams, team A, team B. Team A will give a sentence starter. The other team B has to complete the sentence, and vice versa. And have that as a quiz, a quiz competition in your classroom and so. So think of creative ways, think a bit out. The activities are pretty much the same, but how you do it matters. So it can even be outdoors, and just think newer ways of doing it. It can even be a treasure hunt kind of thing, where you keep different flashcards of words in different hiding places. They have to go find these words and then make a sentence with it. Or sometimes what I do is, these use tissue boxes. The whole inside the tissue boxes, I put in a lot of flashcard words, and they have to just draw out a flashcard, read the word, say the meaning, make a sentence orally, and probably it can be extended to write it out also. They can do these kind of things. Making a book. Sometimes I get each child to write a sentence in the class and about a particular animal or about something like that. And then each of their sentences can be put together in the form of a book. So if I'm teaching, and I connect it with reading comprehension, everything. As I said, all this happens as a congregated whole. So when I'm, when I'm doing something like, if I'm teaching certain target words, so if I've taught the word I and C and A or the, and then I tell them, okay, today we are going to use I, C, A, and the with different animals. Okay, so I get each child is given a sheet of paper. They have to draw a picture of some animal or bird that they like, and then put these words, I see or I see the, whatever picture they've drawn, a dog or cat or whatever, relating to that. And each child in the class have to do a different animal or bird. Then I put them all together to form a book. So their own sentence books have been made. And you can do that as a whole class activity. You can also do this with one child activity. I mean, when they come for remedial sessions, I do that. I do a page a day. By the end of the week, they have like a 7, or by the end of a month, they've already made a book of several pages, depending on how many sessions they come to. So they can go home and read that. So it just reinforces, the listening, speaking, reading, and writing cycle. So do these kind of things, be creative.
Making learning fun and engaging is the key. Thank you so much, Geetha ma'am, for sharing wonderful and lovely hands-on activities, which I'm sure the participants will take it as a takeaway and apply in their settings. Dear participants, the feedback link will be shared in the chat box now. Please do pour in your valuable feedback. And before we end, Geetha ma'am, your words for our participants.
I think this time particularly the participants have been very, very engaged, very knowledgeable. So I don't think I don't know if I've really contributed a lot, because a lot of the ideas that they put forth to the to the questions that I posed, many of them came up with wonderful ideas, and all I had to do was just to wrap up all those ideas and put them in a certain structure for the workshop, for the strategies. But yes, thank you for providing me with such lovely tech support from the ability team, as well as having a great engaged participant community. So enjoyed it as always. Looking forward to the more workshops.
Thank you so much, Geetha ma'am. Thank you, dear participants. And before we end, let me take you through the upcoming workshops. On the 24th of March, we have Improving Sitting Tolerance in Children with ADHD by Dr. Priyanka Halvasya. And then on 31st March, we have Enhancing Expressive Writing Skills in Children with Special Needs, Advanced Level by Madam Geetha Gopi. On 31st March, all of these workshops will be at 4:30 p.m. India time, 6 p.m. Indonesia time, 7 p.m. Singapore and Philippines time. Do check out the link in the chat box and share it with others who can benefit from it. Wishing you all a restful evening ahead. Thank you and take care. For now, it's a big bye from Team Ability.